Despite the movie poster for Forbidden Planet displaying a menacing-looking robot capturing a damsel in distress, none of this actually happens in the movie. In fact, Robbie the robot is a pretty chill guy. Or robot, or whatever. Instead, Forbidden Planet tells the story of a starship searching for another starship that went missing 20 years prior, where they land on a strange alien planet and are greeted by Dr. Morbius and his sheltered daughter, and, of course, Robbie the robot, where along this out-of-this-world adventure, many shocking revelations will be made, including the secrets behind the terrifying monster from the id. In 1956, Forbidden Planet changed the way science fiction movies were made, a ripple effect that's still lasting to this day. So to celebrate, we're going to count down 10 things that you didn't know about Forbidden Planet. Hey guys, today we're going all the way back to 1956 to explore Forbidden Planet. This one's behind the scenes has it all, from drunken robots to an international outrage over the use of miniskirts and complaints from the Musicians Union, which I didn't even know was a thing till now. So, let's check it out. Number 10. Before Forbidden, it was fatal. Forbidden Planet was the brainchild of artist and writer Irving Bloch, who incidentally would also design Robbie the Robot, and author Alan Adler. It is said that their biggest inspiration for this mind-bending science fiction tale was the William Shakespeare play, The Tempest, which also explores themes of a man with magical powers living in isolation with his sheltered daughter, as well as having servants and an evil monster figure known as Caliban, which would become the monster from the id in Forbidden Planet. The script was originally called Fatal Planet. So this classic sci-fi fantasy is pretty much what happens when you take the works of Shakespeare into outer space. Number 9. The title was changed to sound more box office friendly. So there are actually tons of differences in the original script. For example, the original script is set in the future world of 1976. And it sees the expedition led by John Grant, who would become John Adams in the movie, where the expedition would head to the planet Mercury in order to find Dr. Adams, who would become Morbius and his daughter. This early version had no monster from the id, but instead the monster is actually a native of the planet, not a manifestation of the violent side of Morbius's, or in this case Dr. Adams' mind. Eventually, novelist and scriptwriter Cyril Hume would come on board to make massive rewrites to the script, with big changes such as the expedition is now no longer going to Mercury, but Altair 4, with the date no longer being 1976, but a more distant future world of the 23rd century. Oh, and of course, the title was changed from Fatal Planet to Forbidden Planet, as it was felt that the word forbidden would fetch better in the box office. Number 8. A leading actor who was surely serious. Although in the later years of his career, Leslie Nielsen would be known as a movie funny man, always delivering on the LOLs thanks to movies like Airplane, The Naked Gun, Dracula Dead and Loving It, and 2001 A Space Travesty? Okay, I've never heard of that one. Back in 1956, at the tender age of 29 to 30, he was the young and dashing Commander John J. Adams, where he had the confidence, toughness, and romance for a leading star. Nielsen got the part in Forbidden Planet because he was under contract with MGM at that time, whom were producing the movie. So the studio plucked him out to star in Forbidden Planet. The previous year, Nielsen narrated the MGM documentary movie, The Battle of Gettysburg. And the same year as Forbidden Planet, he also starred in fellow MGM movies Ransom and The Opposite Sex. And in the following year, he would star in Hot Summer Night for the company and Tammy and the Bachelor, not to be confused with Tammy and the T-Rex. So he really was a big rising star at that time in the mid-50s. Number 7. Filmed entirely on sets. The 1950s was definitely the time of the sci-fi B-movies, where characters would encounter flying saucers and strange alien creatures. But Forbidden Planet, though made in this era, was not a cheap B-movie. The movie was entirely filmed on soundstages at MGM Studios in Culver City, California, namely the sets previously used to film The Wizard of Oz, with the sets creating truly unique alien landscapes for its time. The movie would also make use of matte paintings and early visual effects, which actually would have been mind-blowing for its time. In fact, one of the set designers, Arthur Lonergan, knowingly allowed the cost of the sets to go over budget, probably because he knew that he was working on a movie that was going to be a game changer. And by the time the studio found out the sets had gone over budget, it was too late. Nothing could be done. Also, Forbidden Planet has the distinct honour of being the first movie set entirely on an alien planet. So this film really was making movie history. Forbidden Planet definitely set a new standard in how alien worlds and science fiction would be presented on screen, and would definitely pave the way for future science fiction spectacles like Star Trek, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Star Wars. Number 6. Robbie the Robot wasn't just a robot, he's also an artist. So of course, Forbidden Planet also features Robbie the Robot, who, just like the movie itself, would become iconic and one of the most famous movie robots of all time. In fact, he was the main selling point of the movie, as he was all over the movie's promotional materials. Robbie the Robot was created by the MGM art department, and he didn't come cheap either, with the prop costing somewhere between $100,000 to $125,000. But it was worth it, as his design was considered groundbreaking for its time. In fact, Robbie the Robot would go on to further his career after Forbidden Planet, where he would return to the big screen again in the 1957 movie The Invisible Boy, making The Invisible Boy a quasi-sequel to Forbidden Planet. From there, the infamous robot would go on to be used in TV shows. As in he was in a lot. Some of his TV appearances include several episodes of The Twilight Zone, The Addams Family, Lost in Space, Columbo, Wonder Woman, Mork and Mindy, and The Love Boat. My introduction to Robbie the Robot was seeing him in the background in Gremlins, where he was talking absolute gibberish. The last thing he appeared in was The Big Bang Theory in 2014. The original Robbie the Robot prop sold in auction in 2017 for $5.3 million, making him the most expensive movie prop ever sold at auction. Number 5. Forbidden Planet was banned in Spain, but for the strangest of reasons. Costumes and props used in Forbidden Planet have themselves also become very famous, and interestingly, a great deal of the movie's costumes and props would actually go on to be reused in the Twilight Zone TV series, including Robbie the Robot, as just mentioned, as it was filmed in the same studios. However, not everyone was in awe of the costumes, namely Spain, as the powers that be in that country were so shocked with the character Altara's miniskirts, of which were worn by actress Annie Francis, the movie would actually be banned in Spain, and the ban wouldn't be lifted until 1967, 11 years after the movie's initial release. Yeah, look, it was the 50s. I guess some people just weren't ready for the miniskirt, with the movie finally being released in Spain when I guess the miniskirt had become more acceptable. Number 4. Robbie the Robot liked to have his martinis. So yeah, we're not finished talking about Robbie the Robot yet. Behind the scenes, there were issues with the guy who was operating Robbie the Robot in his big robot costume. That being stuntman and actor Frankie Darro. As according to Wikipedia, during the movie's shoot, he had consumed 5 martinis in his lunch break. I guess he was having a really good day. And as a result of this, he was left a little bit wobbly on his feet. And while performing in the Robbie the Robot suit, after his liquid lunch, he fell over. And considering the costume was a very expensive prop, this was not very good. So as a result, Darro was fired. I don't know why, but the idea of Robbie the Robot being drunk and falling over is kind of funny. Yep, it's official, Robbie the Robot had too much to drink. However, Robbie the Robot would then be performed by fellow actor Frankie Carpenter. Incidentally, the voice of Robbie the Robot was provided by actor Marvin Miller, who provided voice work narrations for several movies, including Godzilla Raids Again, Sleeping Beauty, and the Police Squad TV series, which, as we all know, would go on to feature Forbidden Planet co-star Leslie Nielsen. He also provided the voice for Aquaman in a 1960s cartoon. So, number 4.5. Robbie the Robot and Aquaman are one and the same. Who would have thought it? Number 3. The first for a music score. Forbidden Planet really was groundbreaking in so many ways, as was also the case with the movie's score. Now, the music wasn't orchestral, as is usually the case with big sci-fi movies. Instead, it was an electronic score, which was actually unheard of for its time, making Forbidden Planet to be the first movie to use an entire electronic score. However, the music for Forbidden Planet couldn't be credited as music due to disputes with the musicians' union, who put their foot down and objected to the movie's score to be credited as music. Yeah, they weren't impressed with the idea. So instead it was credited as electronic tonalities. Okay, sure, why not? Electronic tonalities it is, as long as it keeps the musicians' union happy. The electronic tonalities, as it were provided by electronic music pioneers BB and Louis Barron. They got involved in the Forbidden Planet project as they approached an MGM producer, Dor Shari, at a New York nightclub and asked if he would want to hear a sample of their innovative electronic music. But he kind of shrugged them off, as he didn't really have time for them, as the next day he was returning to California. So according to Shari, that was it, case closed. However, the next week, BB and Louis Barron approached him again in California, where he heard their music and was impressed. And this got them the job on working on Forbidden Planet. Yep, all it took was a random nightclub encounter. Number 2, a new kind of monster. Now, the 1950s was a time when movie monsters mainly consisted of actors wearing rubber suits. However, seeing how Forbidden Planet was all about breaking the rules of that era, a different approach was taken for that movie's monster, aka the monster from the id. The monster was in fact animated, and was animated by Joshua Meador, who worked for the Disney company, who MGM loaned from Disney to work on Forbidden Planet, as by that stage the animation department at MGM had mainly been dismantled. Now, he had worked on the animation for several Disney productions, including Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Fantasia, Bambi, and Dumbo, and many more. It is also said that a little goatee was drawn into the monster as a clue that it was part of the mind of Morbius. But look, I seriously must have dead eyes or something, as I just can't see it. What about you guys? Do you see a goatee in there somewhere? If you can believe it, the monster from the id was considered so scary for its time, some states actually removed the visual from the movie when it was being screened in order not to traumatize kids. Number 1, the remake that just can't seem to get off the ground. Forbidden Planet was released in March 1956, and it was met with wide praise from critics, who felt that it was a fun and exciting and even groundbreaking movie. A movie that was going to be a game changer for the science fiction genre. When actress Anne Francis was asked why she thought the movie was so successful, she replied that from the first day on set, everyone was told to take the movie very seriously. I guess despite the really bizarre and out-of-this-world sets and costumes. Despite its widespread praise for its time, the movie wasn't a huge earner, only bringing in $2.7 million on a $1.9 million budget. But it has, regardless, gone on to become an adored classic and an important movie of its genre. From 2007 onwards, there have been plans to make a Forbidden Planet remake, with the remake going through several different studios, from New Line Cinema to DreamWorks to Warner Brothers, with several creatives coming on board over the years to try and get the remake off the ground, including James Cameron and Joel Silver. However, this project just can't seem to take a break and get made. Even in 2024, there were reports that the remake was still trying to find its way, but nothing. Maybe the universe is trying to tell all these executives that a Forbidden Planet remake just isn't meant to be. Maybe, just maybe, Forbidden Planet doesn't need a remake. Maybe they got it right that first time, and that anything afterwards would just fail. Forbidden Planet has become a widely celebrated movie for its now almost 70 years. It was definitely a milestone in the craft of filmmaking and storytelling. Even to this day, it's considered one of the greatest and most important science fiction movies of all time. I think that Forbidden Planet has aged like a fine wine, and visually still looks very spectacular. I think the movie's effects and sets have a craft about them which gets lost with CGI. And they also have a certain charm that really gets appreciated after living in an era of being oversaturated with CGI. So, Forbidden Planet may now be old enough to start getting a pension, it is still a breath of fresh air. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I'm off to have some martinis with Robbie the robot. See ya!